Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Political Forum. This is a show where it's your chance to come on in and talk with elected officials right here in the show. My name is Mike Jacobs, and I'm a staff member here at KNTV. And joining us tonight is Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin from the 1st District. So, Commissioner, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I'm honored to be here.
So, all right, so for the next 25 minutes or so, this is your chance to call in. You see the number at the bottom of the screen, 312-738-1060, 312-738-1060. If you have a question, comment, or concern for the Commissioner, now is your chance to call in and get your voice heard. All right, so Commissioner, as we start the show, we'll first a lot of stuff to talk about, but for folks who may not know a thing or two about you, why don't you explain yourself?
So let me tell you, I've been elected now for 2 years and 2 months. I'm a member of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. I grew up in Englewood, raised on the south side of Chicago, and went to Chicago Vocational High School, Central State University undergrad in Ohio, University of Dayton School of Law, and spent almost 13 years in Washington, D.C. working for 3 members of Congress. First for Congressman Bobby Rush as an LBJ intern. Next I worked for Senator Carol Mosley Braun, the first African-American female senator elected to the United States Senate. And then I worked for almost 10 years for Congressman Danny Davis as his chief of staff.
So now let's get moving forward. So now, first, before that, if anyone ever needs to get a hold of you, I'm going to show you that information right here. Here's the number and the address. The address is 118 North Clark Street, room 567 in Chicago. You can call 312-603-4566. And you can also email the Commissioner at richard.boykin@cookcountyil.gov. All right, let's get into it. So there's a lot of news that's been going on specifically around President Trump, and one of the things that he said is what he's promised is to bring in federal support to help with Chicago's violence. So what is your opinion on that?
Look, my opinion is that the violence has gone unabated. Just this past month, January, we saw more than 310 people shot, 56 people killed. More people shot in January of 2017 than in January of 2016. The numbers are going in the wrong direction, and so we need as much help as we can get. And so to that point, I've asked President Trump to form a federal task force to examine best strategies, to look at best ways in which the federal government can provide assistance to help reduce this horrific gun violence that we see in the city of Chicago that's damaging our world-class image and harming too many of our citizens and endangered communities. And so I'm hopeful that President Trump will in fact put state and county and city officials and stakeholders on that task force to help come up with some solutions.
When you talk about the task force, people are worried what kind of federal support you're talking about. Is it so? What is involved in the task force?
So what I have in mind and what I've said to President Trump is, or to his people, is that I think we need additional FBI, DEA agents, and ATF agents to help the Chicago Police Department deal with the clearance rate of homicides. Last year, they solved about 24% of the homicide cases, so about 81% of the shooters went, unprosecuted, if you will, or brought to justice. And so I think we need additional resources on that front. We also need resources like job training grants. We need trauma care for communities that have been terrorized and traumatized. And so I'm hopeful that the president will use these federal agencies, Small Business Administration, and others to see how they can come in and play a positive role in these endangered communities. Look, there are 3 police districts that drive the majority of the gun violence. Last year, where more than 4,400 people were shot. Those districts are District 15 in Austin, District 11 in the Harrison District, which covers Lawndale, West and East Garfield Park, and District 7, which covers Englewood. We know where the violence is. We know where the trouble spots are. We have to coordinate our efforts and deal with the violence.
So it looks like we have our first caller of the night. Caller, are you there? Do you have a question?
Good evening, Commissioner Boykin and Mike Jacobson. I've got one question. I've been a lifelong Chicago citizen, and I've been in Cook County, my entire life. And yes, we do have problems with violence in Chicago. Look at the statistics, really. Look at the numbers. The 300 people that were shot last year, what is that, 1/8,000th of 1% of the general population of Chicago? I think instead of focusing, not to rule it out, we do have to focus on the violence and solving that. But I think we need to empower the people of this region to take back the resources that have been taken away from us, namely the South Works project on 87th and the Lake. I'm sure you're aware of it, Commissioner. This is an area of land that's bigger than the Chicago Loop. And I think that it's just been purchased by a new buyer. Now, the surrounding areas have no say in how that land is going to be developed unless our elected representatives speak up for us and say we do need to be involved in that process. There are all sorts of town hall meetings happening right now. I hope that you can find a way to be involved in these processes and these efforts. And I'll get off the air and let you answer this comment on the air. Thanks.
Look, I want to thank the caller for his comment. Let me remind him, though, that the 310 people who were shot in 1 month. That means more than 10 people shot a day in the city of Chicago, and 56 of those people were killed. 46 of those 56 were African Americans, killed at the hands of other African Americans. So basically what we're witnessing is a modern day genocide in too many of our communities. We must stand up, we must speak out, we must say something about this violence. Now is the time, and we must act with great urgency, because we don't want to have another year like we had in 2016. With respect to economic development, the caller is right. Too many of these communities where we're seeing this violence have been disinvested in over a period of decades, and so they haven't received the resources that they deserve. They've seen a lot of jobs leave these communities. For example, let me talk about the West Side, which I represent. We had Brock's Candy Company go to Mexico, left thousands of jobs. We had Sears and Roebuck Company, which was headquartered in Lawndale, left thousands of jobs, left the area. And a number of other manufacturing facilities have left the West Side, and nothing has replaced those jobs. With those jobs also left banks, grocery stores, and you name it, and the housing stock went down. And so we must be involved. We must let our voices be heard. The development on the south side along the lake, I think the caller is right. The people in that community need to make sure that they're involved at these town hall meetings, and need to direct their aldermen as to what it is that they want to see in those developments, and making sure that people who live in those communities actually participate in whatever redevelopment takes place there.
Thank you for that call, caller. Looks like we have another one on the line. Caller, are you there?
Hi, good evening. I'm calling because I recently read an article about your proposed Neighborhood Revitalization Act.
Yes.
And most of what I read sounded like a really great idea, having people like first responders, police, firefighters move into the areas that they service. You also mentioned hiring Chicagoans between the ages of 16 and 25. But one point that I noticed, you did say that you would that the act includes providing tax incentives so that construction companies will come in. How will you ensure also that construction companies that are based in those areas might be able to bid on some of this work?
So let me first of all appreciate you calling and thank you for your interest in the Neighborhood Revitalization Act. And we're going to have a town hall meeting on that act this Saturday on the West Side. For more information, please go to my website at richardrboykin.com. richardrboykin.com is my website, so you can go there for more information on that town hall meeting. This is a bill that came about as a result of our town hall meetings that we did, a listening tour last year of endangered communities. We did 8 town hall meetings in 8 of the hardest hit communities, hardest hit with the highest unemployment, highest violence, highest levels of hopelessness. And what the people said at almost every stop is that we want police who live in our community to police our community. We want teachers not to come from the north side and teach kids on the west side, but we want teachers who live in our community to teach our kids, because it's something fundamental about understanding the neighborhood in which you're policing or in which you're teaching or which you're serving as a public servant. And so we said, well, how do we incentivize people to come? And so basically we're offering free homes to that group that you talked about, police officers, firefighters, teachers, EMTs, who come, live in the community for 5 years, work in the community for 5 years. We're doing a couple of things. One, the city has over 5,000 vacant lots under its control. Thousands of vacant and abandoned buildings, which currently are not on the tax roll. Once one of these individuals takes hold of this property, they're going to begin to pay taxes on it. They take possession of the land at the end of 5 years after they've signed the social contract and they've honored the agreement. We got to get these communities rebuilt, revitalized, and stabilized. I fundamentally believe that if you have a police officer who lives on a block, that police officer isn't going to allow for drug dealing on that block. They're going to have a stake in the community. It's going to help to break the barrier down between the police and the community. I also fundamentally believe that teachers who understand these kids that they're teaching will have a greater stake in the community and the kids that they're teaching. They'll see them at the restaurants. They'll see them at the grocery store. And they'll understand what these kids are going through. But we also say that 30% of the at-risk youth in that area must be hired by developers. The developers who do the development, it'll be an RFP process. It'll be an open process that they can bid on. Basically, the way that we pay for this is through the assessor's office. Assessor Joe Barrios helped us come up with this idea where we're going to lower commercial property tax. It's a new incentive that we're going to create. The individuals will then give a portion of the money that they save back into this fund, and we will have an entity set up like the Cook County Land Bank to actually run this and pay for the properties. It is a great program. I'm urging my colleagues to pass it immediately. Look, it's not enough for us to just talk about things and problems that exist in communities that have been disinvested in. What we must do is come up with concrete solutions, and we must make sure that these solutions get implemented in time to help deal with what a long, hot summer will portend based on the numbers that we got out of January shootings.
So again, so for people who are interested in learning more about this this program, this act, you have said there's a town hall?
There's a town hall meeting this Saturday at Home of Life Church on the west side of Chicago. It's going to start at 9:30 in the morning. There's free breakfast at 9 o'clock. So please come if you're interested in learning more about the program. We'd be delighted to have you.
All right, thank you for that call, caller. All right, so let's move forward. So one of the other things that's been in the mind for a lot of people, and it's been in the news, is the recent Department of Justice report on the Chicago Police Department, talking about excessive force, among other things. So talking with people in your district, what have you heard, and what are your thoughts?
Well, look, basically people that I've talked to said that basically the Justice Department confirmed what we already knew existed, and that is that many minority communities are being disrespected by police. There are a few bad actors on the police force who give the entire police department a black eye. And we got to root those officers out. And we must do it expeditiously. Now, what I will say is this, is that I was disappointed that the Justice Department did not look into Holman Square. It is a facility where people's rights are being violated. They're being held without access to an attorney in many instances. And we held a hearing in Cook County where we heard from a number of people who actually had gone through Holman Square as detainees. And so I'm hopeful that with this new administration and with the commitment of the mayor to, follow through on some reforms. Also, the other thing is there wasn't a consent decree. So, it's basically, I guess, a memorandum of understanding, which, what changes ought to be made. But whatever changes ought to be made, the public, the citizens of the city of Chicago must be involved. They must be at the table. Look, they're getting ready to renegotiate the FOP contract, and these citizens must be at the table so that we can make sure that there's some citizen input.
Let's just reset the show. So you're watching Political Forum right here on KNTV 21. My name is Mike Jacobson. I'm a staff member here at KNTV. Joining us tonight is Cook County Commissioner Richard Boykin from the 1st District. And so please, if you have a question, comment, or concern for the Commissioner, the number's at the bottom of the screen, 312-738-1060. That's 312-738-1060. All right, Commissioner, one thing that came out of the Cook County Commission recently was the implementation of a sugar tax on sugary beverages. For people who may not know about it, talk to us about it, and when does it go into fruition? When are people going to start starting paying?
So look, I voted against the sugary beverage tax, and the reason why I voted against it is because it is a regressive tax. Look, the underlying basis for it is that there's an increase in diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and that sort of thing. But the money is not going for health care. The money is going to plug a budget deficit. And quite frankly, I thought it was the wrong way to do it. It's a penny per ounce tax on sugary beverages, and that includes vitamin water. It includes orange juice that's not 100% pure orange juice. High C, you name it. If it's got sugar in it, they're going to tax it. And it also includes diet sodas, which, quite frankly, don't have sugar in them. And so, I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the fact of the government telling us what we can and cannot drink or can and cannot eat. Where does it stop? Are donuts next? Is there going to be a surtax on donuts? Will there be a surtax on Twinkies? Look, people have to govern themselves, quite frankly, and we can do that. If we provide people with education up front, the tax goes into effect July 1st. Okay. People will begin to see that tax, and it's going to be a heavy tax. Look, on a 32-ounce drink, you're going to pay 32 cents more. And basically the consumer is going to pay it because the price of those products will go up, and you also still pay the sales tax on top of that. And so I just thought it was gouging the taxpayer, and it's the wrong way to do it. Look, water tax, a tax on water bottles, a tax on bags, a new tax on sugary beverages. Where does it end? Is there any end in sight? Government must begin to live within its means. We have to, govern ourselves accordingly. People have not made the kind of money that we would expect them to have to pay most of their income to deal with these taxes.
Looks like we have another caller. Caller, are you there?
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my call. So my question for the commissioner is this. I heard what you just said about government living within its means. And so I guess I wanted to get your perspective on the county's position for all of these taxes, because just to bring this full circle in my mind, Illinois has the highest African-American male unemployment rate in the country. And of course, that is exacerbated by issues with schools and mental health clinics closing. And then you turn around with no education and no job, and you have a barrage of taxes that you have to pay, and living and surviving day to day becomes more expensive, which I think only kind of compounds in the stressed communities, the violence and the need to, kind of duke it out in order to survive. And I just kind of wanted to know what government officials, from your perspective, are thinking when they continue to raise taxes, despite the fact that it's becoming so difficult for people in black and brown communities to survive?
Well, I want to thank the caller for her call and encourage her to look at my record and look me up online. I voted against these taxes. In fact, I voted against the sales tax increase 2 years ago. I voted against the sugary beverage tax last year. I've not been on the side of a tax and spend kind of individual. For that very reason, I think it makes the county less competitive. Look, we just had Aldi, the only full-service grocery store in the village of Maywood, leave the village of Maywood. Now they have no full-service grocery store, no fresh fruits and vegetables at a grocery store because of the fact of property taxes. I mean, they were paying $80,000 a year in property taxes, and the foot traffic had gone down at the location over the last 10 years. And so, no, I've been totally adamantly opposed to this. Look, I think it's bad priorities and it's the wrong thing to focus on. We as a county must make our county more competitive. And the way that we do that is by lowering taxes and encouraging companies to come in and hire local residents. And that's what I'm talking about, and that's what we got to be about. We must make sure that these young people get jobs and get off the streets and not sell drugs, I mean, as a means to a living. And so, I think the taxes have been unfortunate, and what I'll do is I'll continue to fight them, and I need your help. I enlist your support. Look, we need to let these elected officials know that these taxes are a problem. And for that very reason, I'm hosting a regional business and economic summit in March at the Health and Hospital System in Maywood at Loyola. And I encourage you to come to that and be a part of it. But you'll hear from business people who'll talk about how difficult it is to do business in Cook County with the regulations, with the additional taxes that have been burdened on them and on the people. And one thing I will correct is it's not the highest unemployment for just African American males. We've had the highest unemployment for African Americans, period, in the state of Illinois over the last 4 quarters.
All right, thank you for that call, caller. Well, we're starting to wrap up. We have one more caller, so caller, we'll get to this and we'll try to answer it quickly. Caller, are you there?
Hi.
Yes, hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you both for taking my call. And I'm just calling in response of the statement that that young lady was concerned about all these taxes and the poor neighborhoods, etc. Well, I'm going to tell you my opinion. I'm going to tell you like it is. I'm not trying to be rude or anything like that, but in my opinion, the higher level starts with this mayor and this governor calls himself, governor, doing such a poor job. They just don't care, because if they cared, all this wouldn't be going on.
Okay, looks like we lost the call, but I think she was just, you know where she was going with this, right?
Absolutely.
So you would like to comment?
Well, I'll simply say this, that look, we must hold our elected officials accountable. I mean, the power really does lie with the people. And so that's why I'm so proud that you all have this forum available where people can call in. But I think people need to be involved in government. You need to go to these town hall meetings, and you need to let your voices be heard. And you need to vote. Above all, please vote. No matter what you do, vote. Get out and vote.
Well, this show has absolutely flown by, so we've got to wrap up. We have less than a minute left in the show, so I'm just going to quickly show folks ways that they can get a hold of you. Your address for your office on 118 North Clark Street, room 567 in Chicago. The phone number 312-603-4566, and they can email you at richard.boykin@cookcountyil.gov. Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time today, and for answering all the questions. It's a wonderful show, and I also want to thank Sylvia for answering all these wonderful calls tonight. So I'm pleased to let you know that we are always on KNTV Political Forum, or on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. right here on KNTV 21. Until next time, you guys have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.